Looking for all the latest tips, tricks, updates of what's going on in the recruiting industry, check out the Digital Recruiter Sunday night newsletter. I am not here to blow up your inbox. I don't have enough time to create an email every single day. I once a week send you impactful, a big thing that I've learned this week or realized from working with hundreds of recruiters, owning an agency myself. I'm in the trenches every day like you are, and I'm sharing everything that I'm seeing every Sunday, from content, from automation, from how to get better clients, how to find candidates quicker, how to grow your team, how to hire people, everything in between. The link is in the comments. Sign up today, or you can go to my LinkedIn profile, Clark Wilcox. It's the first link on my featured section. You can sign up there. It's all free. So you get all the tips, everything that you need, free in your inbox every Sunday night. Sign up today. All right, welcome back. Another episode, Digital Recruiter Podcast. Got a great guest with me today. Him and I met last year via, where do you think? LinkedIn, obviously. And he has been killing it with the content game as a recruiter. He's just really awesome person, awesome team. Just absolutely just doing everything that digital recruiters should be doing. So I'm super happy to have him here. Share his story. Might talk a little bit how we work together as well, but really more his story, his approach to business development, recruiting. He's absolutely leveraging everything in person, leveraging LinkedIn, automation, all that good stuff. And I think there's a lot that the listeners can learn today. So Ben Cottingham, search practice lead, FireSeeds. Thanks for being here, man.
Here we go. Clark, thanks for having me, man. And love getting to really just get coached by you here over the last year and also just building this friendship. But appreciate you having me on. Really excited to get to hang out again today.
Yeah. Well, I am as well, man. And it's been really cool. We connected. I think we first started talking about like last June, because it was just the regular we connect or you find my content. Like, how, I guess I typically ask how people got into recruiting, but I could also just ask like, how'd you find me?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it was through LinkedIn. Just had seen
Yeah.
your stuff and your content really resonated with me. And I kept finding myself like clicking the save button. Was like,
Yeah.
I need to go back and listen to this. And at some point, I think I was like, I need to talk to Clark. Like, I feel like we just need to meet. And so I think that's honestly all it was. And maybe, yeah, a little over a year ago, somewhere around that time frame now. Crazy how time flies pretty quick.
Yeah. And just, I'm not crazy on these calls. I don't think we just like, we just had a conversation for like what, 30, 45 minutes. And I don't think there was any selling involved. It was just like good conversation. Like, all right, like, yeah, I think you just like, you had a vision because you've been recruiting a couple years. Like, you had a vision and like, content, take advantage of what's this about. I'm like, hey, go, here's a couple tips, couple things to think about, and then kind of let me know, right, kind of how it works out for you. And then you're like, all right, I've done some stuff. Okay, I want to level up my game. And I just thought that was a really cool path. And I love when I have those conversations, and a recruiter like yourself would be like, okay, I've done kind of what I can, but I kind of want to expedite this a little bit. Like, what do we got? Like, I see the vision. I can do a lot on my own. What's like, I don't, kind of just diving right into it, but like, what is that like moment hit like for you? Like, what was that like?
Man, that's good. I can dive into my background a little bit too, if that would be helpful. But when I started out working in search, I was a high school athletic director before getting into search, and I think people say this all the time, but like, how'd you get in this career? I'm like, I kind of just fell into it. I stumbled into it, fell backwards. I don't know. And, my first year had some success learning the ropes, really stepping into a new industry and just trying to learn. And my second year, I think I had more rejected offer letters and no's from potential partners of ours and just future customers than maybe anyone had ever had at the firm. I mean, it was crazy. I like could not close. And I had these awesome candidates and really enjoyed it, loved to work, but it was just like heartbreaking, crazy situations. And some of that is the industry. Some of that is, just, I think probably me learning, how to really make sure folks are engaged in a search and all the things that come with that. But come January of last year, I think it was just really a gut check to me of, hey, what am I going to do to take ownership over my own professional development, my own, really skill set, and take it to the next level. And so I'm still learning. There are folks that have been doing this a lot longer than me and are probably a lot better at me than this. But last year, I think that was kind of the catalyst was, okay, I've learned a ton from a lot of failures in tough situations and wanted to step in and try to really get better. And you said it, level up, try to take it to the next level.
I love that. And for reference, that was about a year and a half into recruiting, right? From athletics, right? From high school, being an athletic director. I'll ask you about that in a second. But it was like a year and a half in. You get through enough failures, and now it's like, all right, now I want to learn how to win. And it's like I think it's such a common journey. I think it has to be a rite of passage for recruiters. Some people hit it maybe 6 months in, maybe a couple years in, a few years in, although probably a little less than a few years in, because by that point, people typically give up if they haven't had the success. But
yep,
like, what? I guess like the failures. Like, did you feel like you were prepared? Like, do you feel like you kind of just like had to go through it? Like, what was? I don't know, kind of give like a little insight and kind of going through that and like the moment you're like, all right, enough is enough. Like what was that moment for you?
Yeah, that's good. I think, at the end of the year, I guess it was 2023, I kind of just looked at what could have been over the past year and it just ate me up. And part of that, I think, was, frustration. I think another part of that was really needing to take a hard look at, here's what could have been if I had done X. And I think getting more granular with it, someone posted on LinkedIn a while back, candidates that say no to offer letters or, say no at the end of a search, however that shakes out, you should know whether or not they're in or whether they're out. And I was really good at getting them to the table and building those relationships. It's my wiring, go from zero, build the relationship, sharing about the opportunity and seeing if it line up. But at the end, I would ignore a lot of these yellow flags and roadblocks that maybe I didn't want to see. And at some level, I just had to get really honest and start asking the question like, hey, what doesn't make sense here? What am I missing? And trying to identify from our first conversation in a really authentic and genuine way of, hey, I just don't think this makes sense. Like, I love making this connection. I'd love to talk with you on the phone and love to get coffee, but I don't think this makes sense for you. And when I started being more honest just in these conversations with candidates and conversations with my clients, it's just like the return on it, it was a flywheel that started moving and it compounded. And I think people really appreciated that I was honest. And I would always say, hey, if anything else, I promise I'll tell you the truth. And I think that's just really resonated with folks.
Yeah, and for context, you're in architecture, engineering, construction, right? Otherwise known as AEC. It's kind of what you head up. You kind of found that avenue, and I can testify for that niche. You almost have to do a double screen at times before you submit to a client because you got to get them to talk to their significant other, especially if it's a relocation and all that stuff. And the benefits, like just kind of talking to that level, I think we learned that the hard way as well, working some of the construction stuff as well. It's a different approach. And there's these things at all industries, right? Healthcare kind of has like the sign-on bonuses for RNs or PTs, right? There's different big things that you're going to, that are sticking points. I feel like I found there's no start date in construction. It's just when you have the right candidate with the right time and you figure everything else, like you just like can't get a start date because it's like, well, we could always use them, right? But then in that, like you have to get really good the initial screening, and I love that. It's like of all things you learn, it's like honesty, right? But I think learning to be honest in recruiting is an interesting thing because there's so many emotions with a job and hiring and job seeking. Like it's not that we're lying on purpose at time. It's like even like lying to begin with, but it's just like almost like what do they need to know? And I think there's just like it's interesting, right? The miscommunication of like what a recruiter actually does, what a candidate's actually looking for, what the clients like. There's such a hidden language there, and it sounds like to me like you kind of realize like, oh, that's what I'm dealing with, and like how do I attack that? Like how do I get people to translate for me early versus like wait until the end?
Yeah, I think learning again, with our partners or with candidates as well, a true kindness and being sincere with folks is to be clear and honest
Yeah.
and just put it all out on the table on the get go. And so learning that, I think identifying, just, hey, things that don't make sense and saying, hey, I understand you're really interested here, or I understand, this is something that you want, but this just doesn't make sense. Help me understand. And so that was kind of the catalyst. And I think taking ownership of my own growth and honestly taking career over how I wanted to grow my book of business and the folks I wanted to serve looked like, hey, how do I need to get involved with content? How do I need to get in spaces where I can build more and more authentic relationships, so that, again, we can just increase the impact that the folks we're able to serve.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to pivot because I probably should have done this 10 minutes ago, but I'm going to ask you because I love that you were in high school, assistant athletic director, history teacher. Like, I got to know, like, you kind of fell into it, but how has that, like, background kind of shaped who you are as a recruiter?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you asking. And I'll go way back, and kind of why I'm in construction search today, because I think that will probably
That was going to be my next question.
Piece together the story. So I come from a family of builders. My grandfather was a residential home builder. My uncle owned a small contracting business here in Alabama for most of his life, really well known here in town. And something that my grandfather did a lot when we were kids, I just heard I built that. And he took so much pride in that. He was a builder, built most of the homes in his town, was a mailman during the day. And it just, he's probably, when people ask, like, hey, who's the person that impacted you the most outside of my dad? Probably my grandfather. And that really stuck with me. My dad hated construction, did not like working with his hands. He was not handy. He'd be the first to say that. And so he was a pastor for 35 years and is now retired. But, I would say my dad is always a connector. He's always just been big on connecting people that he thought they needed to meet. And that was probably wired in me. Flash forward, ended up growing up in Atlanta, played college football at a small school here in Birmingham. And that's what brought me here. And ended up was pretty focused on, hey, I want to coach and teach and invest in young kids that, really needed that father figure, strong male presence in their life. And so it was an urban education for a couple of years. Stumbled into an athletic director job that probably was not qualified for at the time, but it happened and it was awesome. And getting to shape, honestly, just how I think about business and doing work with people today. I mean, those were really formative years. Working through hard situations, putting in 80-hour weeks, navigating really sensitive information, even just leading a team of 20 coaches that had me by 10, 15 years in age. And that was a great experience. We ended up having a couple contractors that were really involved in our school that did a couple capital projects for us. And one thing they always talked about was how hard it was to find people. And in the back of my head, I always just would think it's probably not that hard. Like you just got to reach out to them, or like go.
How hard is recruiting, really? Yeah.
And it never really resonated with me, but these were folks I really respected, and I shared their values, and ended up planting the seed. And then I got connected to some folks here at FireSeeds here in Birmingham, and really did not know what exactly recruiting was, but took a leap of faith. Kind of did a total 180 career wise, but felt like it was the right move for our family, next step in my career, and that is what led us here today. And so sparked interest in construction from an early age, but kind of bringing us full circle, like my whole life in 3 minutes. That's kind of how I got to where I'm at today, if that's helpful.
It's super helpful. It's super cool. And it's, I resonate with, for me, with my dad and my grandmother. I feel like are the two reasons I really got into recruiting. So I completely connect with like the parallel of just having those adult influences, parental influences, in just the relationship you build with them, and just kind of seeing how they approach the world, really having an impact. Because in the recruiting kind of falls into it, but the stories I hear over and over, it's like it's kind of a blend of all the experiences and the relationships that someone has had when it turns into a successful career for someone. Like that's where I see it. It's like the eureka moment. I'm like, oh, Like this is it, right? The
Yeah.
connection trait you got from your father clearly, and
Hmm.
the construction piece and the admiration from your grandfather. Then you work in the schools, and you're working with coaches that are older than you, right? I'm sure like candidates now. I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of candidates that are 15, 20 years. Like it's kind of just I could see how it all the pieces came together the
Hmm.
first few months, and you're probably like, oh yeah, this is probably where I'm meant to be. And so I got to ask, do you think like you kind of knew that, and that's why you stuck it out, even with a tough like first full year? Like
Hmm.
you're just like, no, I know this is it. I just got to figure it out.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. That's tough. I don't think I knew maybe until this last year that I could firmly say like I am most energized when I'm doing what I'm doing at work. And we talk a lot about, hey, where are you most energized? If I was in a highly administrative role, I tell folks all the time, I could do it. I could do it really well, but I would come home exhausted every day. I would be so tired. I'd be so worn out. And we talk about that a lot with candidates. In my role today, just getting to meet people, learn their stories, get to help them, get to add value on building relationships with current clients and future clients, and then with candidates. It is the absolute most energizing thing I do, and I think that's where I realized, like, oh wow, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing, and that can take different forms or fashions, and not every day is a cakewalk, as everyone in this industry knows. But I think the last year and a half, we're really figuring out, okay, this is how I'm wired. This makes a lot of sense for me to be doing what I'm doing.
Do you feel like I get it because then you started posting it. Like I want to ask because you started posting content Q2 last year, 2024 ish,
Hmm.
Q3, right? Like spring summer 2024. Is that right?
Hmm.
Do you feel like you started post like what was your initial motivation to post? Was it to get more clients? Was it do you feel like you had something to say, just to expand the reach? Like what was your like I got to do this?
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. I think that initially it was, hey, I did this event or I went to this place. I just wanted to share. I thought it was cool. I figured it'd be helpful just to show folks a little more of what we're doing. And at some point, I think I realized that I had just this plethora of stories in my head, and I started sharing, and people would comment and people would engage with it, and then it lead to a new conversation with someone either I could connect with on a search or someone I could do business with, and it just kind of spiraled from there. Thinking through ways I can add value, project updates I could share about that I thought was really interesting, even to really granular things within construction or engineering or architecture that I can share about and just give my thoughts, and also kind of be a place where other people can come together and share thoughts. And so it's really fun for me, kind of exercising a little bit of the creative of just getting to tell stories and share my thoughts. And at the end of the day, I am not a marketer, and I'm not professionally like a LinkedIn poster, and I'm not the best at doing it, but it is really fun in terms of just engaging, being able to share some thoughts. And today, I mean, really has generated some great opportunities for not only me just doing business, but even, hey, connecting our partners together where they could do business together, like a residential
Yeah.
contractor and a site work contractor. I can add value by actually introducing those people, and that's something that I never would have known about, and that never could have happened if we hadn't met through LinkedIn. And so getting to just add tangible value, that's kind of changed the game.
Well, it's so. I mean, you hit on so many themes and principles that I try to coach and advise on, and I preach on for however many episodes I've been doing this now,
Mm-hmm.
and but you nailed it when I tell people like don't worry about the lead like likes, just worry about the leads and share your story, share what you need to share that you wish your
Mm-hmm.
clients or candidates knew about the industry, about making their life a little bit easier, just like what's going on, right? Like and I love that you care about not you don't care about going viral or anything else like that. And even the granular, it's like you're getting specific, you're getting details like in your niche, like those are all quote unquote like reasons that content sells. Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not the vague stuff. It's not like, hey, AI, create a post for me about recruiting and posting it. It's like, hey, this is what's going on in Alabama. This is what's going
Mm-hmm.
on in Georgia. This project, like, it's interesting to you. You weren't trying to prove yourself to anyone else. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta. all these stories in my brain. I got to get out somewhere. I need an outlet. Hey, my market's on LinkedIn. Why don't I talk to my network on there? And I think in that you just found your people, you found your tribe of like your community. It's very obvious when you post and you have your likes and your comments. I can see it, and it's just like really cool that you just didn't make it like this big deal, and you didn't be like, well, is it taking time away from my actual recruiting? Like, no, this is an extension of my job, because my job is as a connector and as a relationship builder. And how do I do that at scale? It's like, well, LinkedIn, like that's where everyone is, and you have that feed opportunity. It's just cool that you saw it and went with it, because not everyone sees it. A lot of people look for reasons for it not to work, and it's just interesting that you look for reasons like that it could work.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Still learning every day, but it is. It's been a great tool for us, and again, it's more fun than burdensome, if anything.
What has it done for like the quality of your client partnerships?
That's really good. In terms of, I guess, elaborate on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, do you feel like, because you were struggling, right? 2023, like the offers declined, everything. But have you noticed, and this could be because of like your confidence and everything else, because you mentioned that, I got to imagine your confidence skyrocket, especially when you're introducing potential clients to each other, clients or potential clients. Like, whoa, I got more value to add than just taking a job order here. But have you noticed that like prospects, as you mentioned, you've got a handful of clients from LinkedIn. I'm not going to say they were all, because Ben and I worked together a few months ago, but maybe I'll take credit for one of them. But it's do you notice that they're more like ready to engage and bought into you versus a couple of years ago? It's like, man, I got to convince them who I am and what we do, and amongst all the other recruiters hitting them up.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that authentic relationship building, that is my superpower. I am not, you put me in Excel, I will destroy whatever you've created. The hard skills, like I do not have that.
Both.
But when you talk about just authentic relationship building and getting to know folks and really being authentic and genuine to build a relationship, even if it never leads to business, even if we never do business together. A really good friend of mine who's really active in this industry and has been doing a lot with peer groups. He shared this the other day, and it's just resonated with me. But life is short, but it is long enough to do the right thing. And I believe life is long enough to just build authentic relationships and see what happens. And so I think LinkedIn it's really just been an invaluable tool where I think that I don't feel like a stranger to people if we do connect and if we have a conversation. And I think people trust me that I am being genuine and authentic because of the way that I talk about life and work and everything on LinkedIn. They don't think I'm just trying to pitch them on something. And I'm not. Like I don't aim to do that. If I can't help people, like I'll refer you to so-and-so down the street if we can't help. But if we can, I'd love to share how and what that would look like. And so I think by really just trying to add value and be authentic on LinkedIn, that's allowed me to kind of share, hey, here's how I do business. Here's how I think about building relationships with people. I think that's really resonated with people.
I mean, why not? Right? I mean, like, why wouldn't it? And I just love that you just talked about you're not trying to pitch people, or you're trying to just like figure it out and play the long game. And that's who gets the most out of LinkedIn. I mean, that's who gets the most out of recruiting, to be perfectly honest. But LinkedIn, people are trying to figure out how to make it work. And, we all get the cold pitches and everything else, and we can book you 50 meetings a month. But if you look at it of like the long game, and sometimes when you play the long game, you get short-term wins. It's not an either or, it's an and, right? It's just like, which one do you prioritize first? So you're giving yourself more, again, irons in the fire. You don't know which one is going to be the one at times. And if you approach it that way, especially in recruiting, because we don't know who's going to be a good client without qualifying them a little bit. We don't know who's going to be a great candidate without qualifying. Like, you have to have that step anyway. So why are you pitching without having that step?
Yep.
Right. Because it immediately comes off as transactional, and you immediately get put in the bin of every other agency that's doing that and spamming. Right. It's almost like the good egg, bad egg, and Willy Wonka. Right. You go in the bad egg bin, and and there's almost no need. It's like completely an unforced error. in my opinion, for no reason, just because people aren't taking that extra step to consider, like, how do you actually get great clients, right? And typically it could take a few meetings for that to happen. Maybe it can happen over one or two. That's fine, right? I've seen it done before, but it's typically built over time. Because if you're going to have a search, especially at the executive level, like I know you're doing a lot of, it takes time. You got to get to know them, their environment. But it's going to be a big transition for someone. Like, you want to know the company before just like sending stuff their way. And so it kind of lines into like, well, how do I get great clients? Well, like, you got to start acting like, what does that process look like, and be understanding of it. And I get it. If you're in a rush for more new business, well, yeah, you still can't chase it though. Right. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but I don't even have a question. I just like see you doing it, and I'm just it's cool.
Yeah, that's good. And yeah, I mean, the old adage that wiser people than me that have said, but people want to work with who they like and who they trust and who deliver results. I think that's kind of the recipe for success. And we had a situation, one of my favorite partners of ours, I guess this last year started doing business together, and they're just wonderful, like great folks, really align in culture, values, the way we want to do business, the kind of people that they want to hire, and have had a ton of success. But I had someone ask me the other day, like, how did you meet them? Like, how did that happen? And we only do retained search, which is even kind of another level of trust to be able to say, hey, we're going to be the only firm working with y'all. And so this needs to make sense. This really has to be an in-depth partnership. And I met one of their executives, and we spent 2 days together, off and on at an event, before he asked me and looked at me and said, what do you do? Like, what do you do for work? And I was like, oh, well, I do this. And so again, just taking the long approach of, I just want to get to know folks, really get to know their stories. And again, when you get into it, people always ask, like, if you're at a party, they'll say, hey, what do you do for work? And if you say you're a lawyer or sell insurance or a pastor or a recruiter, everyone's like, I'm going to go get another drink. But again, navigating those conversations, trying to do it authentically.
Yeah, I know. I gotta come up with one that's not that. Just consultant. Right? You just got to say that, I guess.
I'm in consulting. So what is it you actually do? I consult people around their problems. Yeah, there's strategic initiatives. That's good.
I got to look up some McKinsey buzzwords for the like when my kid starts going to birthday parties. Yeah, I'm a consultant of consultants.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Spreadsheets. Google. You wouldn't understand. No, it's what do you think are the keys? We talk about the relationship building, but from a recruiting style, right? You mentioned you get all retained search. What's the key to getting a company to buy into you as a retained search partner?
That's really good.
Yeah, buy in, and also then, like, what's that fulfillment have to look like?
So I'll come back to your question by kind of sharing the story, but there is a mentor of mine, was the managing director for Russell Reynolds for 20 years, and really great mentor. He was an executive search for decades, and was one of the first to really pioneer telecom executive search. And so, I mean, you're talking like the CEO of Verizon led the executive search for Verizon, T-Mobile, all these executive searches all across the world. And I think one thing that he said, or two things that he shared that really stuck with me: more retained search is bought than sold. And when he said it initially, it really didn't resonate with me, but people are always looking for hires. And, my goal is, we're not just out here trying to do searches with everybody. It has to be the right fit. It has to be the right people. And again, everyone has a hiring need. We might not always be the best hire. And I want to be honest to be able to say that. And so I think just detaching from whatever outcome people think that the agenda is, and just saying, hey, we truly are trying to be consultative. I think that's helped a lot. And two, industry expertise, and we've got a really good process. At the end of the day, it's based around finding good candidates, making sure they're a good fit. But the way that we've structured our process and really just aligning it with our clients' goals has been more or less our secret sauce. And I think it's not as much about like man, I've got this revolutionary AI process. We're not the guys that are going to have your revolutionary AI, sourcing process, but we care more, we work harder, and we've got the best results. And so because of that, because I can lean on that, I'm just being honest. I'm just sharing stories. And if I can share stories about how we've done it for, $1-3 billion clients that are in their market that are really well known, it makes things a lot easier because again, I'm just sharing what we've done and seeing if it could be helpful for someone else. And so those are probably the biggest things in terms of how I navigate that personally.
I mean, it's good. I always kind of joke about the like saying that we care more versus demonstrating that you care more. And I know that's what you're doing. That's what the content does as well. And I think that is just like the missing piece that recruiters sometimes don't see. And I get to work. I've worked with hundreds of recruiters now, and you
Mm-hmm.
and your team included. And you can't underestimate how much value it brings to just demonstrate that you're invested and that your
Mm-hmm.
process is invested and that you're going to be working with someone. And it's like, well, I have it with my one-on-one clients. I'm like, here's what we're going to follow this. Here are all the calls you get. You're able to book anytime directly on my calendar. Here, let's book the first 5 sessions together. Let's do that. And they're like, oh, I guess we are going to work together, right?
Yep.
You're not
Yep.
gonna run away from me, which is
Mm-hmm.
an issue in coaching. It's an issue in recruiting
Mm-hmm.
as well. And just showing that if you are invested, whether it's a one-on-one client or retained,
Mm-hmm.
show them what that looks like. And I've been guilty of sometimes actually I mess this up and I forget I get away from it because I get
Mm-hmm.
caught up in a tool or a process or something like some moment. I have to go back to the fundamentals and just be like, that's right. My clients that invest, whether it's recruiting or coaching, retain or pay up front, they just want to know, are you going to be there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if you know that they're probably coming to you because the other recruiter wasn't there for them when they needed them, and that could be
Mm-hmm.
delivering candidates, that could be if an offer goes south, right? I'm sure how you reacted to some of that year helped you a lot last year and become better. But like, they just want to know when the chips are down, when things don't go right, is the
Mm-hmm.
recruiter going to be there and be able to help them handle it? Because here's the thing in recruiting, things will always break because you cannot predict human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You can predict some patterns and you can get some red flags and some gut instincts, but you and I have both been surprised by
Yep.
candidates and clients, and that
Mm-hmm.
won't happen. We can mitigate that, we can remove it, but just it's how we respond to those moments that matter. So I think you could show
Yep.
them in the beginning, this is how we're going to work together, and this is how I like to respond. I mean, you're going to have to test me when something actually happens, but
Yeah.
you almost set up the partnership to be able to withstand turmoil in a sense
Mm-hmm.
or an event that happens.
Yep.
And it sounds like you kind of have like the same approach. And I think that's what people want to see. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what marketing can help demonstrate. And then obviously you got the call and everything else. But
Mm-hmm.
uh,
We lost a search a while back, and I was. I'll kind of share a little bit about it, but someone reached out and said, "Hey, I saw you're kind of in this industry. You do work in construction. You don't do exactly what we do, but I'd love to chat just to see if you could help." And we're having a conversation alongside a firm that really specialized in doing searches for this type of role, and I asked a ton of questions on our first meeting. Just asked a lot of questions, and I just called out. I said, "Hey, here are the 3 things that if this doesn't change, we can't do this. We won't be able to do business together well. And if we can work through these 3 things, we can do this." And they just said, "Hey, the other firm said there's no doubt that they could find this person. They can start tomorrow." And we're going to go with them. And I said, "That's great. Good luck. Like, I hope it's a great experience." I just wanted to be honest. And they called me about 2 months later and just said, "Hey, that other group has been sending us all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, are you still interested in chatting?" And I don't share it to say anything about, again, hey, we're better than X. There's a lot of great folks in the industry, but there's also a lot of people that aren't super honest or consultative. And I want to be able to call out and say, "Hey, here's how this is going to work. Here's how we're going to work together. I want to know how this works with you." And for us to be able to be successful together, win-win relationship, here's how it's got to look. If it doesn't look like this, we probably can't do it. And I think that resonates with the right people who've been great partners of ours, and folks that, again, they don't really want that approach. That's fine. I'd rather know that on the front end than we start doing business together and it's just a constant struggle and nobody's happy.
I mean, that's That's the approach, right? I just posted about one of my clients I worked with a couple of years, and that's been one of the biggest things is just take care of everything on the front end. She's had a few of those stories coming back, and I love that story that you shared because it just shows just being patient, holding to your guns. And I've been using the term like almost like Babe Ruth calling your shot in a sense. Like you're calling your shot of like, okay, if we don't have these things, it's like we can't do it. This might go this way,
Yeah.
and they might go, and that's okay, right? Let the fish
Mm-hmm.
go. If it is meant to be, they will come back, and that is true in recruiting. Maybe sometimes, maybe in dating a little bit, but definitely in
Mm-hmm.
recruiting,
Yep.
the right fish will come back, and they'll come back at your terms, at your rates, right? They're going to see the value. They're going to be more bought in, and there are so many firms that overpromise because I think they're just thinking it one dimensional. Yeah, we can go
Mm-hmm.
find that candidate. That's great. Or they care about signing a piece of paper. Who cares, right? You care about closing the deal. And
Mm-hmm.
when you think about closing a deal, it's going to take three parties, right? The client, the candidate, and the recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
And most people just think about themselves in terms of signing an agreement. I could show someone that I got an agreement signed, right? But it doesn't really matter, right? It's not selling a piece of SaaS software
Yep.
where you get paid
Mm-hmm.
on the agreement side. You're locked into a year membership. This is like
Mm-hmm.
you might get paid even if it's retained, right? Your process works great for a retain, but if you didn't qualify roles well and you still did retain, it wouldn't matter.
Yep.
You would just get 20% of a bunch of searches that didn't close or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the fee is. So like
Yep.
just being able to know what your guns are and stick to them and
Mm-hmm.
like tell the truth. Man, it's so cool to hear you say it. And I never get old of recruiters like yourself that are doing well sharing that because that is the magic. Like
Mm-hmm.
putting yourself in a position where you are able to have a tough, blunt conversation, but still respectful at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they came back to you and just like, it's all good. I get it. Like,
Yep.
that's the magic. And people are worried about
Mm-hmm.
AI and automation and everything else. But if you have that magic, you're good in recruiting for a long time.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think more and more I've been comparing our searches to a construction project, and we get the bid, we put together the plans, we lay out, hey, here's our plan. Like this is the blueprint that is going to be successful for this search. And at the end of the day, I think there's so many X factors that could happen. Like we got to put it out on the table ahead of time. Ahead of time, like, hey, here's the project. If we need to work together to build this thing, this is how it's got to look. And the X factor and the biggest difference is, if I'm a contractor, man, you just go build it. Like there's a lot that goes into that, but like you build it, you actually do the work, and then the result comes on the back end. We build it, but I can't control people. Like I can find talent and I can build the best relationships possible, but I can't make someone leave to come to this job. And so that's like the one X factor in every search that, again, we've done it over and over again. We believe that we are able to do it, but we also want to be consultative and try to control all these other factors to weed those out on the front end, because there is an X factor. Like, hey, there still is a situation where like you, the client, is going to have to engage with this candidate and show them why this is where they need to be.
That's what I would say. We got to ask the three. What are the three reasons your A candidate would take this job?
Mm-hmm. That's
Like
good.
it's just you do that, it starts to answer a lot of questions about what you got in front of you, if you got a
Mm-hmm.
real role or not, and because then you can figure out the messaging from that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can find, look, you and I could find estimators and superintendents right now in 30 minutes. We could find hundreds of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are probably a fit to work at a client in Alabama or whatever that you have. What are we going to say to them? How are we going to get them to respond? Right, the messaging, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
me or you company that they're working at; it's the client. So it has to come from the client. You guys are doing such a good job of just pushing the client to think through this role, the importance, how we communicate that. And if you are as an agency recruiter, to me, the takeaway from listening to you, it's just seeing your content on that. It's just like creating that forum for your clients and your managers
Mm-hmm.
to have a different recruiting experience, one they've never had,
Mm-hmm.
and to just like really just like throw their cards on the table of
Yeah.
what this is, for just like having the walls and the friction, which is so common in recruiting. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hey, we got to like break this wall down to figure it out. And that's what building the trust gets you
Mm-hmm.
as a recruiter. Like you break down the management walls and then have the recalibration calls. Like you can find anything. And the value is you being able to take that, come up with the strategy, and then put in the time to go find and communicate with those people and
Mm-hmm.
screen them, make them match. Like that's the value. The value is not hiding your work. the value is actually showing your work.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing that, like, yeah, actually, there is a lot of work that goes into recruiting,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's like there's a strategic approach to it too, the strategic part and the work part, and then the client starts to
Mm-hmm.
see like, oh, all right, like you're making this make sense to me. Like I see how we can close this search and get who we want. And you're
Mm-hmm.
educating me on the rest of the market, which I think recruiters, third party agency recruiters undersell themselves on how important that data is, all the
Mm-hmm.
different people that you're talking to as
Yep.
well. And I know that's big for you in AEC.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and kind of what I mentioned, like the three most fun parts of my job is connecting clients together so they can do business together, because that's just awesome. I mean, it's so fun. Uh, Actually seeing like tangible value that we can provide. And the second thing, I've actually seen this a couple times, but I had a client approach me asking if we did any sort of mergers and acquisition work, and I was like, we don't have a huge history of doing that, but we could in a way, in terms of connecting folks to parties that might be willing to sell. And you just realize with all these compounding conversations how many people you're meeting with, because we work with contractors, civil engineering firms doing 3 million in revenue. We also work with 50, 150, 500, 1 billion. I mean, the scope of our work is so broad in terms of the size of folks, and so it just makes it more fun getting to share data, getting to add tangible value, not just even on the hiring side, but just helping them see the market.
You might want to consider it. I got a client from a couple of years ago who introduced two of his clients, research
Wow.
and biotech. It was part of an $80 million sale, and he got a broker's
Wow.
fee on that. So you can imagine what that number is going to be.
Okay, I'll
If
call,
we
I'll
just
call you after this.
Yeah, if you ask ChatGPT what the typical brokerage fee is on something like that, it's a pretty nice number. I think that check's hitting this quarter. It could
Wow.
take a little bit of time for it to hit, but it's totally doable with the LinkedIn and in
Mm-hmm.
recruiting, and especially leveraging like kind of Dripify and all that stuff. Like connections, like there's such an opportunity to see yourself. It's not just the one revenue stream of retained search, but you
Mm-hmm.
build this network. How can you leverage that? And that's what's been cool. Digital recruiter, I've been able to see some of my clients create multiple revenue streams for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
starting with recruiting. Some people leave recruiting because they're like, I found a revenue stream I enjoy more. That fits me better, but I still
Mm-hmm.
use LinkedIn and Dripify. I'm like, great.
That's awesome.
Like that's awesome.
Yep.
Like that's a vehicle to find your fulfillment and expedite your network and expedite
Mm-hmm.
where you can create revenue for yourself. At the end of the day, that's where you want to be, right? Like that's so cool. So it's yeah, we could definitely talk on offline, and I can introduce you to him as well. But like it's because it's a super cool story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are just different ways you can kind of think about it, and I think that's like what a system allows you to do, right? I know we worked together. We talked about Dripify a little bit. We talked about content, but just like that top of funnel system, you're not always chasing. It's interesting because it seems like you're able to
Mm-hmm.
make more strategic moves because you have a predictable pipeline. Is that fair to
Mm-hmm.
say?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're able to create more of a plan because our pipeline is so full, and we've got a really great process in place for taking care and investing in our customers that we get to serve day to day, and also again strategically thinking through who are going to be future customers of our firm and who we're going to get to partner with. And so I think again your coaching was super invaluable to that, from Dripify, thinking through different strategic ways with content, even just optimizing my LinkedIn profile. Just very simple things like that just gave us great tools in terms of, as we try to scale and grow and we try to serve more people, impact more people, it's allowed us to do that at a higher level.
And I appreciate you saying that. And I know the message that was cool to get, which was you messaged me. It's just like, dude, like the boring. Because I remember I told you and your team, I'm like, just focus on the boring stuff. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
overcomplicate it. And then you mentioned like, hey, I just spun something up. I posted it and kind of went nuts, and it turned into some inbound leads. I don't know if you kind of want to like talk about that or like the light bulb
Yeah.
moment that was for you. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. I guess that was a few months ago now,
like
and
October, November. Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah, I was maybe not in a lull, but I was traveling a lot for work. We had just a lot of different directions in which we're going there in October, November, and just kind of threw an idea of something boring. I saw your newsletter and was like, Okay, I'll share a really boring story about a situation where this project manager was lowballed. He got offered like $50,000, and it was a crazy situation. With Yeah, again, I won't go in all the weeds there, but
Yeah.
I just typed it up and posted it, and it just blew up. I mean, it was like 750, 800,000 impressions and 700 likes, all these comments. People are like, have really strong opinions about it. Other people are like, I can't believe this. And again, it wasn't intended to be anything more than just, this was a crazy story that I dealt with. And I'm sure other people have maybe experienced something frustrating that's similar. And yeah, because of that, I mean, led to a ton of conversations with future candidates, folks that we never would have met, honestly, all across the country, and a couple of folks that we've had opportunities to have some business conversations with as well. And so just the exposure that got, again, just honestly totally floored with how some of those kind of situations have played out.
Because it's and I appreciate, again, I appreciate you sharing the story, because it's, look, it's the formula can be simple. It can be hard to execute. Life gets in the way, right? You got searches, and I get where
Mm-hmm.
you can make all the excuses in the world. But if you really think about the simplicity of the recruiting process, the execution of the process is a whole other deal.
Mm-hmm.
But but think about all the hurt feelings and all the posts, the negativity. Like, people are going through it, and I mean, just looking at yourself as basically being like a beacon of just like, this stuff can kind of be going on, and just sharing stories. And you're not trying to be polarizing. You're not trying to, upset people or
Mm-hmm.
annoy people. Like, hey, this stuff's going on. This is crazy. And look, if a client's going to undersell someone by 50K or whatever, make that move, or you hear that from someone else, like,
Mm-hmm.
they can deserve. You don't have to call them by name, but like, you got to share the story. And I think what happens is some people can latch onto it,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn so much about your market. And I think it's like, going viral. It's not a requirement to get business on LinkedIn, but it's an opportunity to like really learn, like, oh, this is the pulse of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what's going. This is what people care about. Like, does that affect like how you even approach like conversations going forward,
Mm-hmm.
when you kind of like see some of the reactions to some of your posts? You're like, oh, people care about that more than maybe I thought, or like, this
Mm-hmm.
is something I need to make sure like I cover or address earlier on in the process.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I had a situation last year where I met with this guy. He's an executive at a construction company, and we got lunch. And I drove out to go meet him, and he told me, "Hey, I listened to your podcast, and it was awesome. I love getting to hear this, this, and this. It was really neat, and I just wanted to share that with you." And I never met this guy. I wasn't even connected with him on LinkedIn before that, and just the fact that he had not only seen it, but he went and listened to a portion of it, and then came and was willing to share thoughts. One, it allows my job to be a lot easier, because automatically, like, guards are down. We're just getting to know each other. He already feels like he knows me, and at the very least has a little bit of an idea of who I am. And so I think that's been like the biggest plus, is honestly just, again, the authenticity thing. I keep coming back to it, but it's sharing a story of what we're doing to folks I don't even realize that it's impacting them. And my hope is, again, it's not about going viral. I don't care about that at all. I'm not really big into social media, funny enough, but it gives me an opportunity to meet great people. It gives me an opportunity to meet people from Maine to California to Utah to Texas. And that is the unique part of it that I love, is just getting to meet more great people that, even if we can't do business together, we can connect with them, get to know their story, and build those relationships.
And the result, and I'll share a little bit for you, so you don't have to, the listeners, is that you're breaking all the recruiting and sales records at your company in under 3 years of being there, and like, that's the result. So if you're listening to this, be like, but does it translate to revenue? I could tell you, you can just look at Ben's LinkedIn in the experience section, and is what you counted for about a third of the revenue last year. Um, I could share that because it's public information. I'm seeing it on here. Which is nuts. So if you're wondering, does this stuff translate? Is it worth the time? I think I know what your answer is. But for if you're listening to this and you're doing the cold email and the cold calls, and there's nothing wrong with that per se, but if you want to be more effective, and I think if you want to just enjoy the work more, right? Figure out how to make it an extension of your sales process and get people
Mm-hmm.
to know you earlier. Man, life's a lot more fun on that side.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think, I feel like I just keep hearing stories of folks that have been in agency search a lot longer than I have. And they get into it and then they realize the return on the investment is just tenfold. And so if you're not, active on LinkedIn, you're just missing out. And at the end of the day, it's just the best opportunity to share your story, to share about what you do and how you help people, that is just totally free.
Yeah.
There's no cost to it. Maybe if you're paying for LinkedIn Premium, but the
Yeah,
only cost
get
is
sales
just being
nav. Yeah,
intentional. Yeah, get sales
yeah,
now.
get sales nav and recruiter, right? But again, right off to the business.
Yep.
Uh, what's you? I know you talk about like working with companies with values, and I think this is another part that recruiters sometimes struggle with of like how to vet clients. But like, what do you look for in the types of clients you work with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Something I always ask our partners before we really get into, even talking about a search or talking about business, what they're doing, what they're looking for. I just want to know their story and hear about their kids, hear about their family. And it's not a play. It's how I'm wired. I don't like doing business with people that I don't know, and people don't like doing business with me if they don't know who I am. And so,
Yeah,
we want to work with people that, they care about their business, they care about being profitable, but they are, involve spouses, involve parents. They care about the people's families who they work with. And we use a phrase often, I'm not going to go work and I'm not going to search for a company that's just driven by, profit margin exclusively, and they have massive layoffs and they just have a bad reputation. And I've done that before. We've called around on potential clients and have gotten bad references. And I've said, hey, I'm not going to put my name behind that. And that's a hard conversation. I mean, I'm saying no to business because I don't want to put my name behind someone I don't believe in. And at the end of the day, I believe people would do the same thing for me if they were considering working with me. But I want to work with people where you can be a great spouse, you can be a great dad in that workplace, you can be a great spouse at home, you can serve in the community, but you can also, have a great career, drive professional growth, have career opportunity, make great money. And those two things can exist. And
yeah.
we've seen it. I mean, not just at mom and pop businesses, but $700 million businesses, $1 billion businesses. And so those are the kind of folks that I want to serve. It doesn't mean I don't want to have relationships with all sorts of people, but in terms of who do I want to put my name on, because my name is all I've got. I'm going to make sure I'm putting it behind the right people.
And look, you can always pull the candidates from the ones that you say no to too. So don't forget that, right? And place them with the good places. So it can work out for you. I'm not saying that you do that, wink, wink. But it's the benefit to turning away bad business or potential red flag clients. Now there's a case to be that they get new leadership and they're trying to turn things around. I don't think that's exactly what we're talking about here, but there is a case for that. But yeah, I think there's a lot that can be learned from that
Yep.
approach.
Mm-hmm.
What's last thing? Well, we gotta wind down here. What's one thing that has helped impact you? Look back at your life. That's like that has really helped me figure out recruiting and be a great recruiter.
That's really good. That's really good. One thing that I would say has impacted me to help me be a great recruiter. I wouldn't say I'm great yet, and so we're on the
Ah, you
road
are,
to.
but you can always get better. But you're off
We
to a
can
great
always get
start.
better. I just think mentorship, and I've got a lot of really, really strong professionals that I just let speak into my life, to be honest. I think that, coming in, I'm in this leadership role in a small school, and there's a little bit of a, what am I doing now?
Yeah,
Almost trying to just find my way. And I think, when I was playing football in college, a big phrase that I heard all the time was just leave your ego at the door. Like, no ego. Egos don't belong here. And I'm very confident, but I don't have an ego. And I'm not above anyone giving me feedback. I don't care if you've been here for a day or you've been there for 10, 30 years. But I think that the only reason I'm successful is because I've had great coaches, I've had great bosses, I've had great leaders that have been willing to, within agency recruitment and outside of agency search, folks that have been willing to be honest with me, to share thoughts on how they do business, how they think about business. And without people like that giving me the time to take them to a cup of coffee or have a phone call, I would not be successful at all. I mean, just to be honest, I'd be working very hard, but it really is just because I think lifelong learner, I will always be a learner. And again, every day I want to remind myself just having that ego at the door, because it doesn't help anything.
That's a great answer. I mean, being coachable, I have learned, is one of the highest ROI activities and things I can be.
Mm-hmm.
Is being coachable, because that means I'm implementing what I'm being coached. And the
Mm-hmm.
more I started to do that, the more I started to perform and get better, the more people wanted to help me.
Yep.
And you get the people that want to take as well, but it's the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Is actually more people that want to help that are good. And the people that are good kind of start to come out of the shadows when they see
Yep.
someone with potential to be like them, and they start to give more. And if you're coachable and you're soaking that in and you're showing that you're trying to figure it out the right way, it makes a huge impact. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
great advice. And I definitely say that because I'm biased as a coach, but it's great advice. Let's tell people, that get ROI from working with me, just coachable. Like, it's not that
Mm-hmm.
they just do everything that I tell them to do without questioning it, because they interact with the
Mm-hmm.
material and go and implement and go try, and then we go and figure it out, like what worked, what didn't work,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep going. Like, that's it, right? Just
Yep.
embracing that process.
Mm-hmm.
Get a lot out of life being coachable, that's for sure.
Agreed. I had a coach who always used to say, "Be someone that wants to be coached," and
Yeah,
I want to be coached. And again, I think that's the biggest lesson I'd offer anybody, even outside of this industry, is just being someone who wants to be coached.
I love it. Well, Ben, you killed it. This is awesome. Great conversation. I appreciate you just sharing your journey, man. I know it's new. I know newish. You're newer into the recruiting game, right? About almost 3 years in, but it's cool to see the rocket ship take off, and just you doing things the right way. And just kind of approaching it with that humility. And it's been great to just connect with you and work with you. I'm excited to see if there's other opportunities. Obviously, we can partner and collaborate on down the road. And I got to get an SEC game on my list for later this year. I know we talked about that in the comment section, so got to make that happen
Hey,
at some point.
we'll make it
Yeah,
happen. We'll meet you
yeah.
somewhere down in SEC country, or you can just come down to an Auburn game. We'll make
I
that
will. I'll
happen.
probably throw Wyatt in the car and head down and give him a taste of college football this year. So we'll make it happen. But again, thanks for being on here, my friend. It's great talking to you. This is a ton of value for the listeners, and just appreciate you sharing your story, man. And just wishing you continued success.
Thanks, Clark. Appreciate you having me on, and really looking forward to doing this again soon.